Welcome back to Storytellers Union's channel. I am Kevin. Thank you for returning as I continue my countdown of my 30 favorite albums that came out in 2024. As you can see, I have replaced the virtual background from my first video with the actual Christmas tree here at the house. Hoping everyone's having a good holiday. And speaking of that first video, before we get started, if you did not see numbers 30 through 16, there are a lot of good albums I highly recommend in that first video. Go check that one out first and return to this, as we will obviously want to do these in order. I don't want you to miss any of these great albums from 2024. And then stick to around to the end. Not only do you get my number one, I'll talk a little bit more about some honorable mentions and another video that is planned with some show and tell I cannot wait to share with you. But without further ado, let's get right into the countdown. Top 15 best albums of 2024, beginning with a veteran group, Crowded House, Gravity Stairs. My list is full this year of career acts doing career best work, and Crowded House is no exception. It wasn't just the best album that Crowded House has made since the reunion era. It really is one of the better albums that they have ever made. This would stand out if it had come out during their hit making days in the 80s and 90s. These New Zealanders have always brought it. The songwriting chops of leader Neil Finn have never failed him, but as often is the case as acts age, sometimes the tempos slow down, sometimes the pop sensibilities are not quite as there. They're not as interested in writing hits anymore when you no longer have hits, when you get beyond a certain age. All that is understandable. All of that has characterized the reunion era of Crowded House. And then comes Gravity Stairs, where they tap back into that magic that made their classic hits so irresistible. Check out Oh Hi, check out Teenage Summer. These are two songs I would put on any best of Crowded House playlist. Number 15, welcome returning Gravity Stairs. Another classic act coming in at number 14, and that is Nick Cave, along with his Bad Seeds, with the album Wild God. With Wild God, Nick is still in his mourning period, which has sort of informed the last few records he has done. He has lost two sons now over the preceding years. Obviously, a very difficult situation. The Dark Prince that he is not wallowing though in misery, in sorrow or despair. This time around, even though the previous couple of records have really been deep in that mourning and grief, and as such were very lightly musically sparse, I guess would be the way of putting it. Not the case here. We have bright and lush orchestration that's buoy these songs, and it's almost as if Nick still floats above all of this, looking down, and it's very much inward turning, lyrically speaking. He is doing the work to find solace within himself. He is providing a roadmap of his personal journey back to joy. And so there is actual joy in these songs. And if that sounds like a lot of wrestling with complicated feelings, that's because it is. And as such, it is transcendent. It's fascinating. It's some beautiful art where, again, you have this orchestrated background, the Bad Seeds providing very sympathetic music, as well as these heavenly choirs that come in and sometimes light up a song, and very much highly recommend to you Wild God by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Number 13, MJ Linderman, Manning Fireworks. MJ Linderman is probably the hottest property in indie music right now. He is the it boy, a poster child for the fact that rock and roll is not dead. It just may have a bit of a southern twang to it now, because the Asheville, North Carolina-based singer-songwriter really is the leading face of what is a burgeoning rock movement that is yeah, maybe it gets classified sometimes as Americana or singer songwriter, but this is rock and roll. Here's a guy who obviously listened to his drive by truckers growing up. Um, what you have with the Manning Fireworks is maybe a little more guitar heavy than what Linderman has showed in the past. So that also gives it more squarely into that rock and roll category. He's got his Neil Young or other classic 70s rock folks going there. Um, I think that Linderman is a good poster boy for what is this burgeoning movement. He is a very unique songwriter. He can at times be just deadpan funny as a narrator, and then in the same stanza, he will stun you with a turn of phrase that kind of cuts to the bone. So it's a unique style of writing, and Manning Fireworks is full of that type of songwriting and amazing guitar playing. It is my number 13 album of 2024. Number 12, Michael Kiwanuka, Small Changes, an album that is very aptly titled because Kiwanuka has not made many changes to the formula that made his self-titled album in 2019 so very compelling. This time around, the Soul Man maybe doesn't have as immediate an impact. This record doesn't jump out at you maybe the way the last one did, but it is one of those that I think that reveals itself the more you listen to it. And I think it is one of the bigger growers, as it were, of any album that I had on my list for 2024. So if you like the Bill Withers style voice that Kiwanuka brings, it again is mid tempo for the most part. It's beautiful music to put on in the background, but also when you do pay attention to the lyrics, you'll appreciate just the quality that Kiwanuka brings to the songwriting. His guitar work is also exceptional, very tasteful. It is just great R&B singer-songwriter fare that would have been a hit in any number of decades prior to this one. It has that type of sound to it. Michael Kiwanuka, Small Changes. 11, coming in at 11, Guster, Ooh La La. Indie pop lifers, Guster have been making music since they first met in college more than 30 years ago. So it's really a testament to them that they are doing career best work or things that could stand up to their career best this long into a career. I think it's their finest album since 2010's Easy Wonderful. It's lushly produced. It highlights the vocal harmonies that have been the center of their sound since they began again in college more than 3 decades ago. Check out Guster's Ooh La La. With that, we will move into the top 10. And spoiler alert, Johnny Blue Skies is actually Sturgill Simpson, if you've not heard. I will not even attempt the album title. I will mangle the French pronunciation. We'll just call it Passage. But because of that pseudonym, that Johnny Blue Skies pseudonym, when I first knew this album was coming and I heard that, I thought it's going to be one of Sturgill's genre projects. You know, since his last true country record, he threw on a leather jacket and did a classic rock album. He posed on a tractor and did a couple of bluegrass albums. So it was obvious to me that Sturgill seemed like he was exploring the many options and exploring the many sides of his personality, trying to decide who he was as an artist. And so coming out with a pseudonym, I thought this is going to be something very similar to that. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that this really was the true follow-up to 2016's A Sailor Guide to Earth. It really is a sonic completion of a trio of records if you throw in Sailor's Guide as well as meta-modern sounds and country music. It is Simpson's take on classic country sound that he, templated on those records, along with some 70s rock, some orchestral backing, all the things that folks want from Sturgill Simpson, he brings to the fore here. In the standout track, Scooter Blues, he has the lines which I love. When people say, "Are you him?" I'll say, "Not anymore." So it's a very playful nod and clever way of of Simpson basically acknowledging that he has a desire to put away and break away from any expectations that we have upon him, while also exploring his artistic whims. Again, there's a lot of 70s soft rock in this as well. It's definitely a artistic move for him and not a genre experiment. It just kind of takes Sturgill Simpson down to what Sturgill Simpson really is at his core, and that is a country music artist that follows his own whims and doesn't get himself bound by genre, which I think works to the advantage of this album. And if it takes him, using a pseudonym to come up with albums this classic, then long live Johnny Blue Skies. Dipping further into our top 10, Waxahachie, Tiger's Blood, coming in at number 9. In 2020, St. Cloud was one of my favorite albums of that year. I think I still may prefer just slightly that record, but just the fact that Tiger's Blood comes so close to recapturing that Americana masterpiece, I think is enough that I can definitely highly recommend Tiger's Blood. I hold that prior record in such esteem. The fact this one is even close is amazing and shows that she is really on top of her game right now. Tiger's Blood also has one of my favorite songs of the year, and that is Right Back to It, which is a duet between Katie Crutchfield, who is Waxahachie, but a duet between her and the aforementioned MJ Linderman. So Crutchfield is definitely still in her Lucinda Williams phase in this record. So definitely, if you like the last one, you will love this one as well. Number 8, Father John Misty, Mahashmahana. I'm probably mispronouncing that as well. But Father John, his last record was great. It made my list at the time. That was 2022's Chloe in the Next 20th Century. But it was a bit of a departure for him in that it almost ignored the fact that rock and roll ever happened. It really looked back for inspiration to early 20th century influences. And it was very successful. It had his signature songwriting, that being Josh Tillman, who performs as Father John Misty. And this time around, though, Tillman has went back to what is really in his wheelhouse of that 70s singer-songwriter rock with these very genius, sometimes quirky, sometimes very snarky lyrics. One of my favorite lines from the most recent record here is stabbing at the ashtray like it might give up the truth. You don't have to be a smoker to appreciate the writerly truth that is evoked by a line like that. And Mahashmashana is full of those type of lines and songwriting. This stands tall in the Father John Misty discography. Oftentimes here, though, track times are stretching beyond 8 minutes. There's only 8 tracks on the entire thing. Honestly, the longer the song, the more likely that I am to even like it. I think the longer songs on here are some of the better ones. A case in point being the very disco-like, I guess, Time Just Makes Fools of Us All. Regardless of what flavor that you like your Father John Misty, it is on display within these 8 songs, including that closing track, which is the one nod back to that Chloe style of music that was from the Great American Songbook. So if you really liked Chloe, you get a taste of that as well in the closing track. But that would be the Father John Misty coming in at number 8. Highly recommended. With number 7, I got some visuals now as well. I have people ask me sometimes how I consume my music. I was late to embrace streaming. I held on to CDs longer maybe than most just because I liked physical product. Obviously, most things now I stream. as most of the world does, just because of the convenience and the fact I can listen to way more music than I ever have before. But with the vinyl resurgence, I have also got back into collecting, and there are certain albums that I do want to make sure I have a physical copy of. So I do a mix of both. It's a hybrid. And coming at number 7 here is one of those as an example. I have here the Lemon Twigs, A Dream Is All We Know. I have the Ice Cream colored vinyl. I think that's what they call it, is the ice cream. Sometimes these colors, why not white? Don't know, but that's ice cream. But A Dream Is All We Know is a wonderful record, a continuation of what is a very prolific period for Lemon Twigs. In 2023, their album Everything Harmony almost cracked my top 10. This time they make the top 10. They came very close to doing so with last year's wonderful record that I also highly recommend. But they are really doing more of the same here. Last year I'd said that they'd finally figured it out, that they'd stopped their 70s and 60s homages as being ironic. And once again, they just lean into their influences of classic rock music, soft rock music, and they do it without a smirk, which I believe is how I described it last year. That continues this year as well. They take it very seriously. There's no put-ons, and it is a formula that is working for them, and one that I hope that they continue so that we can get more albums like A Dream Is All We Know. Number 6, The Decemberists. As it ever was, so will it be again. Have this one as well. I bought this one directly from the band. I don't know if you can see that. It's on like a wood grain vinyl that was exclusive from the Decemberist store. This double album is fantastic for any Decemberist fans. They announced the arrival of this record with 2 pre-release singles that could not have been more polar opposite. You had Burial Ground, which was an indie rock earworm with backing vocals from the Shins' James Mercer. And then when you think that's what this album was maybe going to be like, they released Joan in the Garden, which was a 20-minute audacious piece of prog rock that honestly the band had not attempted. They hadn't displayed that side of their personality since The Hazards of Love back in 2009 in concept. In sheer length, you would have to go back to their 2004 EP, The Tane, to have anything quite like what is Joan in the Garden. But again, those 2 polar opposites were how they announced this record, and it made fans wonder what the entirety of the album would be. And what it is basically a journey through the past discography of the Decemberists. Because it is a physical product and created as a 4 sides double EP, or excuse me, double LP, each of the 4 sides is very distinct in musical style. So they're able to showcase everything that they have done throughout their decades-long career for whatever fans of that particular era of the band might hope to hear. And the fact that all 4 work so beautifully is a wonder, but it also is why this album is so high on my list, because they nailed every bit of that. The first side is their more modern indie rock period. Again, Burial Ground is among those. You also get on side B their sea shanty style of storytelling. And then the third side is more stripped back, more acoustic based. And side 4 is dedicated completely to the audacity that is the very wild, woolly, and welcome Joan in the Garden. This album works as a retrospective of everything the band has done, as well as a way forward. It all completely works. Moving into the top 5, we start off with a legend, and that is Dwight Yoakam with his recent album. This is one that is sort of an end of the year, still kind of assessing it. It may even go higher the more I listen to it. I can see myself coming back to Brighter Days a lot. It's been nearly a decade since Dwight Yoakam released an album of all original songs, but decades are irrelevant to a man whose sound is this timeless. The songs here on Brighter Days could have been released when Dwight was debuting in the 80s. It would have fit just as well. He does not change. The Paintsville native is one of one and excels at making Dwight Yoakam music, which he has done here. And that is, what is Dwight Yoakam music? It's that classic Bakersfield country via 60s rock with maybe a hint of psychedelia, always a couple of covers. This time around, it's both the Carter Family and Cake of all like things to pair together. And of course, it all sounds like it was performed in a honky tonk somewhere. Again, solely Dwight Yoakam music in that Dwight Yoakam sound. He does collaborate here on Brighter Days a bit more than he has in the past with others. There's even a surprisingly effective Post Malone duet. The end results, though, are all Dwight hillbilly poetry. And when I say hillbilly poetry, I will leave you with this great line from California Sky. I drove so far that I finally had to stop at the water. If you've ever driven there, then you know just what I mean. Stood in the sand, looking out farther than I could holler, where I'd made it all the way to the end of our shattered dreams. Poetry, perfection. Dwight Yoakam, Brighter Days, number 5. Number 4. I know that this is hard for me to not have at the top of my list. That is how good all the albums are from here on out. But I wrestled with these decisions here towards the end because there was a lot of great music. Jack White producing one of those best albums of 2024, No Name. Simply put, No Name is the best Jack White solo album. It is without question, by a large margin, the best Jack White solo album. I will also say it's one of the best things he's ever done, period, which says, I think, all you need to know about No Name. Considering his work with the White Stripes, this is the most, without a doubt, White Stripes album of Jack White's solo career. If you've longed for Jack to return to that raw, primitive, revved up blues rock and roll sound of that White Stripes era, this is the album to pick up. No Name is that record for you. It's Jack White doing Jack White things. And if rock and roll is supposed to be dead, do not, no one, tell Jack White that. We want him to keep making albums just like this one, No Name. Number 3, St. Vincent, All Born Screaming. St. Vincent, also known as Annie Clark. I have the album here, and I love the splatter. This came in many variations, and this was one of my favorites, so I was happy to get a hold of this. If Annie Clark makes an album in any given year, there's a very, very decent chance that that is going to be, if not my album of the year, in contention for it, because she continues to prove herself as one of the greatest artists of this generation. She has always made a habit of reinventing herself. The St. Vincent moniker is sort of a character that allows her to be someone else every single album with a different look that kind of matches the aesthetic that goes on in the music. You know, previously she's used this St. Vincent character to portray the hypersexualized electro nymph all dressed in spandex of mass seduction. There was that 70s era that was her last album, A Daddy's Home. It was she's been a cult leader. She's been a distressed housewife. I mean, she's done it all under the guise of St. Vincent. And then this time around, there's no overarching theme that can be discerned. She's got her natural hair color, a look that seems close to who she really is. And I believe All Born Screaming is close to who she really is. And in interviews, she said as much, that there's less play acting on this one than she's ever done before. As always, though, her pop song craft is exquisite, impeccable, and applied to a variety of styles, everything from the Nirvana-like Flea, which actually features the Nirvana drummer, Dave Grohl, there on drums. You have a Nine Inch Nails kind of homage in Broken Man, one of my absolute favorite songs of the year. That one still just absolutely tears the paint off the walls. You get the Prince funk-like workout of Big Time Nothing. It is, again, shows her range and just how adept she is at owning whatever genre she puts her talents to. Where she goes from here, this being a tour de force, who knows? If she goes back into character, if she goes back into specific genres, or if this is the path forward. Whatever it is and wherever she goes, I will follow, suggest you follow. St. Vincent, coming in at number 3, All Born Screaming. Number 2, my runner-up for album of the year. Again, these top 3 or 4 were all so hard to try to differentiate between because I love them all, some for very different reasons. Hooray for the Riff Raff, The Past is Still Alive, one of the albums I listened to most over this past year. I've always enjoyed Hooray for the Riff Raff. That is the band under which singer-songwriter Alinda Segarra releases music. I've always appreciated their music. It started in 2007, really, though, as more a folk project, but it's just taken on different sonic hues through the years. And what it has done, though, is culminate in what I think is a perfect 37 minutes that is The Past is Still Alive. The best work Hooray for the Riff Raff has ever done. I have liked their other albums in the past. I have never been as obsessed with an album that Hooray for the Riff Raff has produced the way I have been The Past is Still Alive. I do think it does contain my personal absolute song of the year in Buffalo. The expressive vocals of Buffalo, the poetry of Buffalo. It is indicative of the other music you'll find on The Past is Still Alive. It is just the perfect distillation of it. So if I recommend one track to know whether or not this album is for you, pick up Buffalo. And I will quote lyrics again because, again, this is just sheer poetry that works even without the music from Buffalo. And our footsteps fall in shadows, treading light down the canyon trail. And the sun is barely rising, and the stars like a wedding bell. And I cannot lie to you, because you can read my mind, so I think I'll try with you. Some things just take more time. Amazing, as is this entire record. Hooray for the Riff Raff. Which brings us to my number 1 album of 2024. Drum rolls out there, if you would. Vampire Weekend. Only God Was Above Us. I picked this up from from a local indie store. It was an indie exclusive cover. If you purchased from your independent record store, whatever version of Only God Was Above Us you get, doesn't matter. You get the amazing music that is contained within. Vampire Weekend just doesn't release music very often, but I think the time they take between must be just for them to implement quality control, because the band has yet to release anything that wasn't absolutely superb, which is really unusual to have no clunkers this far into a career. The neatest trick that they pull, though, with Only God Was Above Us is how each song can evoke a previous version of the band without sounding like a retread or like it's something that you have heard before. The world music that, the minimalistic sound that they debuted with way back when, that DNA is still there in songs like Connect. That post-punk frenzy of classic songs like Holiday, you can find it in tunes on the new record like Gen X Cops. That orchestrated atmosphere of one of my all-time favorites of theirs, their album Modern Vampires, that is on Mary Boone as well as others on this album. Even the Grateful Dead like Sprawl that they sort of debuted for the first time on their last release, Father of the Bride, that's apparent in the closing track on Only God Was Above Us, the song Hope. So yes, everything that Vampire Weekend has ever done, it sounds like Vampire Weekend music here, and all of that is on display. It sounds familiar, while also pushing the band sound forward. It was Bruce Springsteen who I think had put it best once. Obviously you all know I'm a big Springsteen fan, but I mean, he said the trick is to continually surprise your audience by giving them something that they want. Well, how do you give them exactly what they want and also manage to push your sound forward and not repeat yourself? That is a trick and difficult to do. Puts artists, especially career artists that at this point have been around a minute, it makes it very difficult for them. Vampire Weekend pulls this trick off. They stick the landing. A quick look at the liner notes shows that this album was recorded with full orchestras, not just a couple of folks on violin or things like that. These are full orchestras. It was done in 5 years' time across 7 different studios in the US, the UK, Japan. Because of the nature of how this album came to be, it should be able to, I mean, you should see the stitches if you look closely. It should be a mess, quite honestly. And instead, it is the most Vampire Weekend that there has ever been. A compelling masterpiece that will stand the test of time and is also my album of the year. And with that, we have counted down all 30. And if you've stuck with me through the 2 videos, I appreciate that. And thank you for doing so. Please leave me in the comments what you think I should have added to my list and what I might have missed out on. And I will tell you, as a bonus, I have one more video coming for you. This one will be a little more show and tell. Things I didn't consider for my top 30 that are in my honorable mentions are things like reissues, special editions, retrospectives, EPs, some live music, things that don't fit my criteria when I'm looking at full albums of the year. So that video will be coming within the next few weeks. Please look for it. Thank you for tuning into this one. If you don't already, follow Storytellers Union, subscribe or like our channel. It would mean a lot to us, and I hope that you and yours continue to have a wonderful holiday season, and I'll see you down the road.